Okay, thank you. Good evening. Welcome to the City of Groton Committee of the Whole for Monday, August 22nd, 2022. Clerk, please call the roll.
Present are Mayor Keith Hedrick, Deputy Mayor Depot, Councilor Lisa McCabe, Councilor Paul Norris, Councilor Piazza, Councilor Sheffield, City Clerk Edward Jacome, and Finance Director Ron Uhas. Excused is Councilor Carter.
And I just want to congratulate Councilor Carter and his wife. They had a baby born on the 20th, and her name is Khaleesi Jean Carter. She weighed 7.7 pounds. Nope, 7 pounds, 7 ounces. Sorry. So that's why he's on here. He's got daddy duty. All right. So the first thing we're going to talk about tonight is 655 department presentations, November, May elections. So with that, Kirsten, I'll get you. Do we have a microphone? Okay. So get you to come up, just introduce yourself. Okay.
Hi, for those of you that don't know me in person, I'm Kristen Venditti. I am the Registrar of Voters for the town and city of Groton. There are two of us, however, my counterpart couldn't make it tonight because she has family obligations on Monday evenings. So I just wanted to come, spoke with Edward City Clerk Jacome, and wanted to discuss the changes that the state law put into effect and what might be your options. I did a little, not many, but some pros and cons as to what we want to do with the election. So the state law changed in effective January of 2022. And it states basically that all May elections will now be conducted in November of the odd years. So basically, your city council and all your May election, the state says is now to be held in November, unless you guys vote to keep it in May. So I'm here to kind of be a sounding board so you guys can discuss what you may or may not want to do, if you want to keep it in May or if you want to just do nothing and let it move to November. So I don't know if you want to say something before, or if you guys want to ask questions, or City Clerk Jacome probably knows more about the law too. It's up to you.
Right now, this is informing. I do not intend to recommend moving this to the next mayor and council meeting unless at the end of this discussion, you guys are convinced one way or the other. Because there's not a lot of leeway in this whole thing. Councilor Sheffield, I saw your hand.
I think it's something that maybe the committees of the political parties may want to discuss to see if they request something like that to move forward. So that might be something that we may want to discuss with the political parties first, and then may see how that works out, and then bring it back to us. So,
Deputy Mayor Depot.
My questions would be more probably in a practical nature, which I was gonna say maybe have the registrar go first, because I'm betting some of your pros and cons are gonna answer some of the questions that we would ask anyways. Since you're the one kind of that is there for every election, you might be able to better tell us logistically what that would do, what the effect of that would be, both keeping it or moving it, if that makes sense.
Councilor McCabe?
Yeah, I'm assuming that as we were voted in for a 2-year term to end in next May, which is an odd year, which means we would, if we voted to go to November, our term would be extended? Is that what?
Yes, in the law it states that if your term changes, so in other words, if you do move it to November, your term would extend through November. Everything would still be the same for you, except ending in May, you would now end in November. So you guys would all keep office. Nothing would change until the November election. So I can, go ahead. Sorry.
Counselor Sheffield?
So with that, the new term would start January 1, if, upon like the other November elections, I guess, as far as changing of the council would,
I
after
don't-
the election, yeah. When would that new council be sworn in? After November? Would that go into the new year, or would that be 2
I'm-
weeks or something like that after?
I'm pretty sure that it would be in, by the end of November,
And
that you
November,
guys would take new office,
New
whoever
off-
was
okay.
voted in. Yeah, it doesn't take as long as some of the other items
Okay.
that change in January.
Okay.
But I'm just going based on the November election in the town. They seem to take office before the end of November
Okay.
for the RTM and the
RTM,
council.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, just to clarify,
Counselor Norris?
sorry, I apologize. So, town and city councils would be voted on the same year or opposite years?
They would be on the same year because we have a 4-year
Yep.
program. So you guys, your terms are 2 years for the most part. There are some, like town elections that are 4 years, but every 2 years, we would have an election. So every 2 years, the town and the city would be all the council and the mayor, and then, the council and the RTM for the town would all be on the same day.
Sure. So, yeah, I really, picking up on Deputy Depot said, like, if you could give us your pros and cons, because my first thing would be, is there a cost savings? Is it a bigger headache? How do we do logistically? Those kind of things. And if you can also, why our elections are in May and not in November, because I'm assuming that was based on some type of conflict with other elections. So how do we work around that?
Counselor Sheffield?
Yes, well, the reason why they're in May, Paul, because of the borough, this is technically borough, and borough elections are in May compared to town and regular city. So now everything is now into November, so.
Go ahead. Are there any other questions before? Okay, Kristen, please. Well, I was gonna save you until afterwards unless you wanna go first.
No, she can go first.
Okay,
Okay, so it was kind of hard coming up with pros and cons. There's only a couple that I can think of, but perhaps discussing tonight, we may come up with more reasons of one or the other. But like you alluded to, there is a cost savings. If you go in November, it wouldn't be a completely separate election, so the city would not be paying for everything. We would split that up based on what our needs are for your election versus what our needs are for the town election. One of those things would be probably a couple extra people in your 2 districts, just to make sure that we have everything covered, somebody to explain, speaking in November, obviously, somebody to explain the 2 ballots. We would most likely, first when we were thinking about it, we thought maybe we could have 1 ballot, but if you guys remember, the town ballot is already double-sided, so the city would have to have their own ballot. So therefore, everybody coming in to vote in districts 2 and 3 for the district, would be getting 2 ballots. This could be a little confusing for the people, because, even though I'm sure you guys are all well-versed, there is a lot of community that doesn't even understand what they're coming out to vote for. They saw a sign that said, "Vote today," or something, and so they're stopping in. There's other people that don't follow it. They just feel that it is their responsibility to vote, so they just come in and vote kind of on the fly. There's a lot of people that research who they want to vote for and everything, so they might be a little more in tune. But I still think even people that are, seasoned voters with a lot of research under their belt could potentially still get confused by having two ballots, even if we explain it, because my understanding is that not everybody listens to everything you say anyway. So you get like, the first few words and they're off and running. In their mind, they're like, I gotta do this, I gotta go to work, I gotta go shopping, whatever. Their mind is not on this. So that is a potential con, is the confusion of the voters. I don't know that the confusion of the voters would go away even after the first or the second year, meaning every other year, the second time you guys would come up for election. Only because not everybody votes in every election. So, just a little bit of an example, I guess, is we just did the redistricting. It affected some people in the city going from District 3 to District 2. That was confusing enough. We received lots of complaints from people and questions and confusion just on the fact that their polling location changed. They don't even understand the difference between the 40th and the 41st district, for the most part, I'm getting from the people that have complained to me. So understanding is not always there with a lot of people. We'd get a lot of confusion, and that wouldn't end after, 1 or 2 elections even. The elections in May, one of the downsides would be that there's only 5 elections in May as of before this law took effect. So we get less help from the state because they're on their regular day, because it's not 169 towns, it's 5 towns that have an election. If you guys voted to stay in May, you could potentially be the only one that stays in May. So therefore, the state support may not even be there as much as it isn't there so much for the 5 towns on the day. I would try to work that out with the state to have somebody that I could call for emergencies that I could actually get through to try to help that situation. But that is, or could potentially be, a con to holding it in May, being the only town or city that we have, borough, in this election. One of the pros for going to November is just the fact that one of your polling locations is a school again. And if you have the election in May, the school most likely will be open. We are working on getting them to close that, so that obviously will wait until you guys decide what you want to do. But even for primaries and things like that, I've spoken with the superintendent and they want to close it. So that may not be a con necessarily, or a pro to having it in November, because we might be able to alleviate that issue for the schools. That's really all I have when I was trying to think of what would be good or bad for either or. I think you guys have a lot of, maybe it's kind of similar for both. Like there's pros to November, there's pros to May, and vice versa. So really it's kind of up to you guys. But if you have any other questions, or if what I said brought up any thoughts, feel free to bring them up and let me know. I can try to answer.
Okay. Before I go to questions, I want to get Edward to report out on what I asked him to do.
Yes, so I agree with Kristen, and thank her for coming, that there might be some sort of a amount of savings there, whether we splitting the poll workers. And so one concern that come up to me now is, how would the absentees work, whether that be something, Town Clerk McCousher would do, or it'd be something that I would handle for the absentees. Second, I did reach out to other boroughs for their elections. A handful of them were not informed, or their legislators did not inform them, and they were also looking into the law and reaching out to their town city attorneys to get some more information. There was a few Jewett City and Stonington borough that remain to keep their elections in May due to minimal polling locations, just as one polling location. So we're involving logistics, there's pros and cons to that, something for the council to consider whether they like to keep it or not. But the decision's got to be made.
Okay. How many did you reach out to?
I have 8 here, 8 boroughs who have elections in May.
Okay, so I think there's 9. We reached out to 8. Most of them did not know. We were the ones that informed them that this was a change. So in general, the legislators did not reach out to their boroughs and let them know. We found out through Betsy McAllister, because she sent us an email and said, hey, when are we shifted? And I'm like, well, hold on a minute. So, me talk about a couple of things. So there's always something to be said about keeping status quo. You don't confuse anybody. It is one thing that is different, sets us apart from the town. We do have a charter that says that our elections are in May. I have a phone call out to my attorney about the charter. How do we get around that? Does that force me into a charter change sooner than later? Certainly, you're not going to get a charter change by next November. So what does that mean? The other thing is I'm reaching out to the attorney to get his opinion on where should we go with that, go with this recommendation. And then the extension of this council would stay on until November instead of changing out in May, right? That's where it is so far. All right, so that's something that's new as well. There is some cost savings, but that potential cost savings is limited. The confusion is the biggest thing that I'm concerned about. I mean, it's hard enough to get people to come out to vote now. So now what you're gonna do is you're gonna have a town election and a city election at the same time. Who am I voting for? If I'm voting for council and I live in District 2 and District 3, who am I voting for in council? Who's running for council? I mean, if you look at the way the town is set up now, you will have people that will stack the ballots and say, I'm gonna run for city council, RTM, and Board of Ed, and I'll get picked up for something. So are they gonna now say, I'm gonna run for city council and, so I'm gonna run for town council, city council, Board of Ed, RTM, and mayor, right? Because potentially, now you got somebody that says, I'm gonna run for all 5. And then the odds are I'm gonna get voted for something, right? That's another, in my mind, another point of confusion and potential disruption in the election. So, again, in order to move this from November to May, it takes a 75% vote, which is 5 out of 6. I gotta have a supermajority. So that means 5 out of 6 of you would need to say, yep, we wanna stay in May. If not, then we go to November. This is not a mayor said. I do not get a vote on this. So let's see what else is in there that I think is important for you to be aware. Nope, I think that's it. So that's my take on it. Now, again, you have 3 different inputs. There's all kinds of, there's gonna be as many opinions as you have people that you ask questions of. So, and nobody's figured this out yet. This is brand new. So let's, we'll start there. So there were some questions. Okay. Councilor McCabe?
I was just thinking that if we did have it in November, wouldn't it be more likely that we'd get more voters voting in our election because they're coming, maybe they mostly come for the town, but now they're going anyhow, and here's the city ballots, we might get more participation in the election. That was my one thought for a pro.
Have you noticed a difference in turnout for town elections versus city elections, percentage-wise?
The percentage for both the May and the November elections tend to be about the same. We do have a little tiny bit more that come in November, just based on your 2 districts. There are a couple more people few more people that come out, but it's only like a 2% more
Okay.
for the November elections than the May elections.
Okay, so I did want to give, right, So I did want to give you that information. Now, I will tell you, during a presidential election, we do see a much larger turnout, right? So, and this council, whatever council is running for city council might benefit from that, or they may not, you never know. And then you always have the potential for a primary. Primaries is something we never counted on until recently. And then in the last 2 years, we've had a couple of them. And we've never had them before, and suddenly they got them back to back. So that's something you can't rule out in the future. And that is an additional cost that is not budgeted for. We do not budget for primaries. So, Counselor Sheffield.
And speaking of primary, what date would the primary be if that was to take place?
You're right.
And move, if that was pushed back to November, when would the primary be if that happens next year?
Be an August primary, just like,
Just like.
wouldn't that not be in August like what we just had?
I thought that was in September. Am I wrong?
I don't know.
I could be wrong.
Yep, we just had a primary August.
We just
Yeah,
had a primary.
it was August, so yes, it'll be around the same, well, not this primary. This is a midterm primary. The dates are different than the local elections. I'm pretty sure the primaries are in September.
Okay.
So that would be in September when school's going on. But either way, if you have a primary in May, school would still be going on, so there's no difference there.
So we either have a primary in March, which is what we did last year, with a general in May, or you have a primary in September with a general in November. Deputy Mayor Depot.
Okay, I have
My
a couple of
apologies.
questions. How many years have we, I know since like the beginning of Groton, but how many years has it been that we've been doing the May election in the city?
I believe, and I could be wrong, but I know it's right around here, but I think it was 1963 was the first May election for the borough.
Well, 64, so I'm stating this only based on the plaque that has the mayors in it.
Yep.
And in 1964, special act created the city, right? And in 1964 is when we had our first election. So since 1964, we've had elections in May.
Yeah, you probably had a special election in 64 because they're always on odd years.
That's true.
So maybe 65 was the first official that they had a special election to elect a mayor in 64.
That
maybe.
account, you know what? That account, because I could never account for why was that a short term, and that's why.
Yeah.
Yep, you're right. And that's so obvious, really, and I'm thinking about it. I'm sorry, please, Deputy Mayor.
That's okay. So I agree with the two ballots causing confusion. I know that I encourage everyone to print out a sample ballot because if you don't vote in every election, it can be very confusing. So that would be, to me, one of the bigger cons is that I think it would make more people hesitant to vote because it's a bigger task, if that makes sense, and people tend to be like, you know what, that's a lot, and I don't know. I know that I actually had someone last year tell me I didn't vote because I didn't know how to find the information and who to vote for, so I just decided that I shouldn't because I don't know who I'm voting for. And so I feel like that is gonna be a bigger issue if we put more candidates on the same day of voting. And a question about does the city not contribute to the cost of November elections at all? Is that completely paid for by the town?
Correct, because the city has nothing to do with it. November, you guys would pay
Right.
for your May election.
Right. So it would be, how would we determine the cost sharing on the city's part? Would it be 2/5 since how many? There's 7 districts?
2/7.
Not necessarily. I think that if we were to go with a November election, we would have to meet with maybe both mayors or the town manager and the mayor, however it works out, to discuss. So maybe you guys could meet ahead of time and get your feelings on what you would want. But I think the only fair way to decide it is to get everybody in one room and make an agreement. My thoughts, without talking to anybody or having any agreement, is that it's a November election. We always have one. So the town would probably take the brunt of everything. And then anything extra that we would need to have a city election, like I said, a few extra poll workers probably, some work in the office that would be separate, obviously the printing of the ballots, and we'd have to split the programming of the memory cards, is what I'm thinking would make sense, you know, if they're already having one. But the town may say, no, we don't want to do that, we want to split it a little more so that the city pays for some of the poll workers that they require also to try to save the town money, which also makes sense to me. So that's why I figure we'd have to get everybody in a room and discuss.
And then, what was my other question? Oh, if we were to vote to keep it in May, can another council at a later date vote, can it be voted back and forth and back and forth?
Yes, go ahead.
Okay, so there's no limit, you can just,
Yeah, they
if
could,
another council decided, they could just
so,
vote to put it in November if we vote to keep it in May.
page 151, I'll read the section. It's municipal elections in the first Monday of May of the odd number years in accordance with the provisions of subparagraph A of this, such legislative body may subsequently determine by the majority vote to hold such municipal elections on the Tuesday after the first Monday of November of odd number years. So they could bring it back up again if they want to. At least that's
Oh,
my
okay.
interpretation of it.
I see, okay. What was my other question? I feel like, you know, during the primary we just had, there was milling on the road during that election, and there was access to the voting location, but even that caused some people upset. I think if we were to move the election, I think it'd be a large disturbance in a lot of how people are used to voting in the city. And, I don't know, to me, it's a large disruption for not much benefit, because the only benefit that I see would be, as Councilor McCabe said, if it was the case that more people came to vote in November, that'd be great. But only a couple percentage points of more people, I don't think is worth moving the election and changing, and potentially having to change the charter, is a big deal. So I would prefer not to do that. So that's kind of where I stand. I think that's all my questions. Thanks.
Other questions or comments?
Yeah, I
Councilor
concur
Sheffield.
with Councilor McCabe. I like I think having it at one time a year would bring out everybody. And of course, you have the separate ballots, so you have the accessibility to all the candidates of their choosing. So I think it makes it pretty concrete. So I'm in favor of, November isn't a problem with me.
Councilor Piazza?
Thanks, Steve. Thank you, Mayor. I just wanted to clarify a couple things before I ask the question. So I wanted to understand, if we don't change it in the charter, if I'm understanding this correctly, it still can be moved to November, correct? This still, by a vote, could be moved to November without
Yes.
a change in the charter?
Right.
Okay, I just wanted to double check that.
I need to get a judge's ruling from my
Right, from the
attorney
attorney, right.
on how
Okay.
do I work around that.
Correct. And my other thing is that, I think there is a lot to ponder, and I think there's good pros and cons, and thank you, Everett, for doing all you did, reaching out to, that definitely helps, I think, for me it does, and the pros and cons. One of the things I would like to say is, when we talk about change, so change happens a lot in our lives, and we have to adapt. Is this a mandatory thing? Doesn't seem to be. But I look back on our primaries and elections last year, and there was a lot of education as far as how do you fill out the votes. There was a lot of signs out for when the mayor wrote in. There's a lot of education. So I feel like when we do campaign, whoever is running, obviously that can be mixed and comboed in with, if it should be moved to November, that we at the same time are educating our constituents on how to vote. I would think that's what's being done when we go out to campaign, but also too in watching the last primaries and the elections, but that was also done too. This is how you write it in, this is how you vote. So it's not something that can't be done. We can still do a lot of education for change. That's, if somebody is concerned about that, you know, as far as changing and what can we can do.
Counselor Norris.
I'm trying to freeze the questions in my mind here. So, first, if the election was moved hours to November, still the same two voting locations? Okay. You may not know now, but the percentage of eligible city voters that actually, compared to the town, not in terms of individuals, but in percentage-wise, you wouldn't have a guess on that, would you?
Are you asking the difference between if all 7 districts vote versus just the 2?
Correct.
Okay, so yes, go ahead.
Sorry.
Don't go ahead.
Well, because what I'm trying to figure out is a simple way to determine the cost. Cost sharing is based on percentage of potential voters. I mean, it just,
Correct, but in a town election, Districts 2 and District 3 vote in the town elections too.
right,
That's where we run into, you know, what would you do? Maybe split District 2 and District 3 in 50% of the cost of the workers
got it.
go to each town or city. I
Sure.
don't know what they'd want to do with that. But as far as percentage of voters, every district has approximately 3,000 voters in it, with the exception of District 4. With the new changes in the redistricting, District 4 now has 5,000 voters. We have 22,000 total, 21-something, total registered voters that are active in the entire town.
Got it.
So there would be about 6,000 voters that are just the city.
Just the city, right. That's what I was getting as numbers to come up with a percentage.
Yeah.
And then the other piece to that is, so assuming there would be a cost savings, whatever that savings is potentially could be used for primaries?
Well, it depends on how we would budget, because the budget for your May election, I would assume just happened, like the budget that went into effect July 1st includes your May. So if we were to have a November election, that money wouldn't get spent, and you would have to budget for that this fall or winter.
Right.
Whenever, you know, everybody does it about December, I think, you decide what the budget's gonna be. So we would have to determine before that what the cost would be in November,
Right.
so that we could budget properly for that.
Right. Operationally, that's you guys, but I was just also thinking from the terms of, you know, yeah, we may say maybe confusing, but it may be nice to just get out and vote once, you know, instead of doing it, who knows?
Well, on that note, as far as education, if you were to combine, I've already been trying to think in my mind how to make it easier for the voters. We would put a lot of education out in the hallways of the polling locations for District 2 and 3. That would explain the different ballots with a picture of the ballot right on there. We'd have to put some kind of a big thing, say, you know, hey, this is new, attention, new stuff, whatever wording we did. But my thoughts were to put like a big sandwich board type sign out in the hallway before people actually get into the voting location that has the information on why they're getting 2 ballots and what they look like. I mean, we'd obviously make them completely different colors. They would be different sizes, most likely, to try to keep it as clear as possible to the voters.
And we could still use the same machines.
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
Any other questions or comments? Deputy Mayor Depot.
Is there a deadline when we have to decide this by? Is it by, like, before the March primaries or before, I mean, the other thing is that if we, whatever decision we make, I'm hesitant to wait too long because people start campaigning. And if we're because if we don't vote to keep it in May, it will automatically revert to November, which means that we won't have to start campaigning this coming year. But I also am curious, since Counselor Carter is absent, not of his own volition, he couldn't be here, I'd be interested to see also what Counselor Carter thinks. If we have the time to either do another cow or bring it up at another meeting or something.
Absolutely. So like I said, this was informing. Do not intend to move it to the September election. We will, so right now, I think there's a request to reach out to both political parties. I'll do that. I'll also reach out to the attorney and talk about the charter. So is there anything else, any other information that the council would like to hear on this? Okay? Then, go ahead.
I have one more question.
Deputy Mayor Debo.
Would it be possible to reach out to Mayor Melendez to see what their council thinks of it? I know that they don't get a vote, but it would also change the way their election runs for them, their town council. And I'd be curious to see how they feel about that.
Okay, so
Just an informal opinion from, even if it's just from Mayor
from him
Melendez.
or from them? Him?
Whatever Mayor Melendez thinks is appropriate.
Okay, opinion on,
Because it will change their election, because they'll be running at the same time we are.
Are you asking for an opinion from the mayor, as he speaks as one vote, not the entire body?
understand.
Right, or if the mayor thinks that he should speak to his council about it.
I can get him to, I'll talk to Mayor Melendez.
I just think it would be an error not to ask them at all what they feel, because it affects their election. I'm not saying that we have to vote anything based on what they think.
Or inform them, not necessarily ask.
Right, I just mean, I think it, because it's possible they haven't talked about it. It is our election, but I think if we're going to say, hey, in districts 2 and 3, guess what? You're gonna have 2 ballots now, and people might be confused as to who you are. I think it would be courteous of us to say, hey, this is the possibility going forward, just a heads up. And make sure that they know that we're discussing it and
Mayor,
debating
man,
it.
well, it was brought up, it was brought up lightly at the redistricting, when that came up, Registrar Voter, Kristen, presented the case to the council, so they're somewhat aware of it, but, like you said, you could still reach out to them.
Okay, I'll reach out to him. Go ahead, Kristen.
So I just wanted to say, I mean, if it's easier, I mean, I can email or talk to Mayor Melendez, and including the town manager might be beneficial as well if you're
Yeah.
going to talk to Mayor Melendez.
All right.
But I don't mind reaching out to him to find out
let's-
how he feels, and I can
Yep,
report
then
back
let's
to
do
you.
that. But I would like that, so that I have that information prior to my next cow.
That's fine, I can send an email tomorrow.
Okay? Deputy Mayor Debo.
I just want to clarify. My main reason is there's only 6 of us here. So I'm curious on a professional colleague level, how the other elected officials that will be affected feel about it. Not, again, not that we don't have to take their opinion into account because it affects us mostly, but professionally, I'm curious how they would feel. Because there's 9 of them who are kind of in the same boat. We have to run every 2 years and get elected, and I'm curious what they think about it. That's all.
Okay. I'm not,
I have,
I will we'll do that. I'm not sure that this election impacts their election or back and forth. I think having 2 elections the same day impacts.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
But I think it impacts us, I don't think it impacts them.
Okay.
Well, I just don't. I mean, that's my opinion. You've asked me to reach out, we'll reach out. But, go ahead.
I do have one more thing that City Clerk Jacome mentioned. Absentee balloting, that is going to be probably one of the hardest things that if you do move to November. Just keep in mind that people are not going to want to, if they need an absentee ballot, they're not going to want to go to the city and the town to get their absentees. So that is something that will need to be worked out, ironed out between the two clerks, I imagine. But we'll also have to know what's going on, just, so that we know where to send people. But that's another potential issue that I didn't bring up originally, but he did.
Counselor Sheffield?
What about drop boxes as well? Mail, drop box for ballots, is that going to take effect also?
I believe that the city does not have a drop box at this time, and I don't think that the state is going to allow them to have one. So that might help in the decision, or I'm not sure what that, maybe you could answer to that one.
I would have to do a little more research on that, Counselor. Coming into this position, one election is something I have not done, so that's something I'm gonna have to definitely do some more research on. Definitely with the state, and if they'd allow that, because if not, I'd be more than happy to have it, but.
And the other thing on that matter is that the state has not given the city access to the CVRS system, which is where we house all of the the registered voters for the town and the city. So I know in the past, City Clerk Patrick had to do all of the absentees manually, like on a spreadsheet type of a thing. So that could come into effect, but I don't think the state is going to allow the city to have access to the CVRS such as that the town clerk has.
Anything, Counselor Sheffield?
If we, by happenstance, fail to act as far as voting, if we want November election, if we don't act, there'll be a November election, and there won't be a May election any longer.
The way that I read the law is that if you do nothing, you will have a November election. If you want it in May, then you need to vote to retain it as a May election.
The problem with doing nothing is you got that tricky little thing called a charter. It says we have an election in May. So
Right.
if this council, I am going to ask this council at some point to take deliberative action and to vote on whether you're gonna do November or May. I will not ask you before you're ready, but that we will be on record where we're gonna go. I owe you some answers, and I'll get that to you for the next committee of the whole. Counselor Sheffield?
And speaking of that, did the state consider the charters regarding May elections? Was that taken in consideration to where charters would have to be altered and revised due to this action?
I think that they discussed it. However, the state overrides any town charters, so they just left it in your lap, I think. Basically, if you want to go against your charter, you're going to have to change it, basically.
Clerk Jacome?
I'll just read a piece of our charter. It says, page 2, Article 2, Section 1, subsection A. Unless otherwise specified in this charter, qualifications for nominations, elected of municipal officers, and appointments to boards and commissions shall be governed by Connecticut general statute. So I guess my understanding is that statute would go before the charter, unless the charter specifically says otherwise. So.
Is there anything else? Okay, we will, thank you. We will get back to you in September. This will be on the Committee of the Whole in September.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for coming out. Okay, continuing with 655, Planning and Economic Development Tagline Survey. Sierra? This is informing.
I couldn't get it to work. I was going to display these taglines on the smart screen, but wasn't able to get it to work. So hopefully these handouts will help you guys. So basically, we are in about year 2 of our strategic communications plan. And in that plan was to design a tagline, which is kind of like a brand that best represents the city of Groton. We have drafted 3 concept plans that we actually need your opinion and the community's opinion on as we continue to develop it. So yes, we are looking, the city of Groton is looking to develop looking towards a well-developed and thoughtful brand that best reflects the community's character. We need your help in developing an authentic brand that best represents the city's sentiment towards the city's past, present, and future. An authentic brand is a statement about the pride and appeal of our community to residents, businesses, and anyone interested in investing here. This brand will be incorporated into community projects and help the city of Groton communicate its value and distinguish itself in economic and community development opportunities. So there is a survey that is available. It will be on our City of Groton's main website. It is on Facebook now, and there is a display in our foyer where you can scan the QR code and access the survey. Just going into a little bit more about the concepts. The first concept we have is Groton City, a place to grow. This tagline communicates that the city of Groton provides an environment in which individuals and families have the space and resources to grow and create the lives of their choosing. This concept focuses on growth as a process of development. It is in its correlations to economic, our local businesses, community, resources and amenities, as well as social advancement, one's future or family structures. Concept 2 is Groton City, history in the making. Many know the deep-rooted history that comes with the city of Groton, from the Pequot tribes to the battle at Fort Griswold, the submarine capital of the world. This concept pays tribute to not only the past, but the future, looking at the multitude of possibilities that are yet to come. The settlement and growth of family legacies and new milestones reached by local businesses. And finally, concept 3, Groton City, making waves. Making waves cultivates ideas of innovation and recreation while signifying the city's coastal proximity. This concept also points to the significant impacts and impression the city has made on economic and community development in Groton and in southeastern Connecticut. So my ask from you guys tonight, I believe Clerk Jacome emailed everyone a link to the survey. If you can please participate in the link and also share it with as many individuals as you can. We will be having this survey open for about a month, and we're just trying to get as much feedback. And the feedback could be specifically if you're choosing one of the concepts or if you actually have any design critiques or things that you would like to have considered. And as an example, just for the Groton City, a place to grow, you'll notice it has kind of like a green path feel to it. Some individuals have voiced maybe having that be blue and having more of a wave effect there. So you could play around with these ideas as well. And yeah, I look forward to hearing your comments and feedback.
Okay, questions or comments? Councilor Sheffield?
Yes, I've already participated in the survey. Actually, all three are really good. I mean, I'll say my personal favorite is Groton City, history in the making. I like the look on that with the monument. So that's my personal favorite. So I'm just throwing that out there.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, thank you, Sierra.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move on to police, chief. This is 758, Nuclear Safety Emergency Program Grant. Okay, chief?
Thank you, everyone. This resolution is to accept the grant that we put in for, that the city council approved us to go after. They have accepted our plan for the $41,118.00. What that does, our plans for that is the 4 security cameras that we had talked about a while ago to check the egress in and out of the city in case there's floods or get everybody out. That way the dispatch That was in the tune of $29,300 for the cameras and the installation. The rest of it goes to this EOC room here, new tables, five new tables that will go in here, upright wall cabinets over here to rearrange everything and make it more organized and easier and efficient to work in. So that has been accepted, or has passed, they have given it to us, so I'm asking for the city council to allow us to take it and utilize it.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Depot.
I just wanted to comment, I think all of the EOC, the Emergency Operations Center stuff kind of falls on you, Chief, right, I've been to one set of drills, and there's a lot happening, so I think anything that helps you organize all of the stuff that you need for EOC is always a good idea. Obviously, it's also great to get grants, but I think anything that helps us streamline that process of all that possible chaos, if we do need to use the EOC, is great. So I think that's a great use of that money.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay. Counselor Sheffield?
Will this have to be, expenditure be renewed after this expenditure? How long will this, for this budget, will it have to be done again next year?
Every year.
Every year,
Yes, sir.
okay.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions or comments? Counselor Piazza?
Thank you, Mayor. I don't think any specific questions. I think that when you went over the whole system, I think it was a really good explanation. I think we're all for it, but I mean, I think I just want to piggyback off of Deputy Mayor Depot that I'm all for efficiency. I think it comes from my background as nursing, so the faster we can get things, the faster things can move. So I'm all for it.
Thank you, Counselor.
Counselor Norris?
So this is a one-year grant that the city can apply for multiple times?
Correct. Every year, the nuclear grants are put out, and they ask for our input, what we need. It also goes to exercises that we must perform in September. So there's exercises, training for 3 months, so that's $1,500. They reimburse us for that.
So we'll be applying for this grant every year,
Correct.
right? So it's not a recurring cost on the cameras. We're gonna apply for this grant every year. Okay, any other questions or comments? Okay, clerk, double check me on this. The next meeting is September 6th. Is that correct? Okay. I'll take a motion to move this to the mayor and council meeting of September 6th, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Okay, purchase order to TriTech Software Systems.
Okay. Thank you, Mayor. The TriTech computer system is our computer-aided dispatch center that runs the whole police department. That is our records intake, our dispatch center, all pertinent information and detailed information within the department. We purchased TriTech. It used to be called a different name, TriTech, which was formerly Central Square. It, back in 2003, this is the annual maintenance and upkeep of the system to maintain our records. So that is a reoccurring cost every year for maintenance. This is the 1 year for 2022 to 2023, in the amount of $17,149.57.
Okay, comments? Counselor Norris?
Just for information, do you know is there an increase this year versus?
I'm sorry, sir, I don't have that info. I can find out for you, and I'll get back to you.
Deputy Mayor Depot, did you have a
That's what I was gonna ask.
Okay. Anyone else? Okay, I'll take a motion to move this to the mayor and council meeting of 9/6/22.
So
So
moved.
moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? Motion carries. Thank you, Chief.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Chief.
Council,
Thank you.
thank you.
Okay, 794, Public Works Municipal Building Improvements. So Bill and Joe,
It should be, but I don't see it there.
so this is 794.
Yeah, I've got misplaced at home.
This is something that we've been working on for a while, that I wanted to get moved. So, Bill, I'll let you lead off.
Good evening. So the municipal building is in need of some facility repair. So there are three things that are in scope. Window replacements, that's all the exterior windows on the first floor, totaling 86 windows. The storefront, which is the glass entryway right here in the lobby. And the third thing is the concrete entranceway, which is just outside. The windows, I don't have the exact age of the ones that are installed now, but I do know the most recent installation, we put 6 of them in back in 2001. So the newest windows are 21 years old. So I anticipate the other ones are nearly 40 years old. Many of them leak, they're not energy efficient anymore, and the same thing applies with the storefront in the front. The concrete entranceway outside has been damaged through, de-icing using salt. So much of that has sprawled, and it's in need of repair. One of the things that we're looking at for the replacement of that is to put a ice melt system in as well. So when we replace it, we'll also put an ice melt system in and a drain system, so we no longer will have to treat it. Okay? We reached out to our 4 on-call architect engineering firms, and I have a proposal from one of them. So Lothrop Associates proposed a cost of $98,200, and that will be inclusive of the design and engineering services, providing a cost estimate for the work, construction documents, preparing bid documents and advertisements, and lastly, construction management to perform the service. So I'm looking for approval for that, so we can move forward with that. The project will really be a staged or a phased-in approach, so we'll identify what we have, based on the cost of the project, identify what's the most critical. I anticipate perhaps the windows, and then we'll move from there based on that. Questions?
Deputy Mayor Depot.
So, I know we've been looking at this for a while, and your predecessor had looked into it. Did he get any quotes before, or were we at kind of the same stage where we didn't have quotes yet?
No, we do have some pricing, and I looked at that, so, and again, this goes back a little bit. So for the windows, we had a proposal back from 1998.
Oh.
And I have a value for that. And then that was like $230,000 for the windows. And then
1998, we don't have anything more, we have something more recent than that.
2021.
2018.
I'm sorry, 2018. Thank you.
Okay.
Yep.
I was gonna say
Thank you, Joe.
I'm more comfortable in that because
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure I was the mayor
Yeah.
when we got to, okay.
So thank you, yeah, so 2018, and also for the storefront, we had a proposal for $75,000. And around the same time, for the concrete work was about $30,000.
So on top of this, almost $100,000, the $100,000's for the planning, the preparation of getting the quotes, and then we're going to be spending over $300,000 probably, because I can't imagine it's not
No.
skyrocketed now in the last couple of years.
Well, those numbers are pre-COVID. Storefront systems are roughly 9 to 18 months lead time now.
Yep.
And costs have gone through the roof. So part of this is the architect, if we get the approval, is going to look at the cost and determine the approximate cost, what should we budget. We do have some monies available, whether that's sufficient enough to cover all this, we don't know yet, until we get these documents done. Both Bill, myself, and Ron Uhas met, and we all agreed that there should be just one design firm and one contractor because there's a lot of overlap with the concrete work, the storefront and the windows, and just a lot of the logistics involved.
And the other big piece of it will be a prevailing wage job because it'll be over the $100,000 improvement. So just that piece of it alone as well will help with the engineers, will assist with that.
Right. And then we're currently looking at municipal grant and aid money and out of the capital, right?
Yes, we already set aside some of the municipal grants and aid money for this project when it was first introduced, which is why Tim was getting the quote, so we could try to get an idea of the magnitude.
Right. And we've already tested our windows for PCBs, because that was an issue. We've already tested for hazmat. So we know the answer to that. So what we're gonna do is, this is gonna get us the engineering, and then we'll try to get some quotes, and then we're gonna phase this to finally get this done. So I'm anticipating shovel in the ground next year, and hopefully get it done within a year. But it depends on lead time, availability of construction materials and construction people. Ron?
Just to clarify, it'll be one big bid package that it's gonna go out, and it'll be a full formal bid. So it won't be quotes for individual things, there's gonna be one big package that's gonna go out to one vendor at GC who will probably have subs for the certain phases of it.
Right. Councilor Sheffield?
And Ron, would that entail potentially, are we gonna put the motion to say not exceeding 98,200, or that's gonna be it? Or could it be, or will there be more than that down the road, as far as expenditure for the project?
Their proposal was a fixed fee of the 98,200 to do the entire start to finish from the engineering side of it. There will be another resolution that will need to come back for the actual construction piece of it, but this should cover the entire engineering for the entire project.
Okay.
Except if there's any unforeseens that we don't know about.
Right.
Right. Councilor Piazza?
Thank you, Mayor. So you had, Bill, you had mentioned about when the windows were, the last one's a 6. I was just looking into, the ice melt system, great idea, but that's not my expertise. So how often is the concrete actually repaired before we actually put this ice melt system in? And so what I'm looking at is how often we've repaired it already compared to the ice melt system that is extending any kind of repair need. And I'm assuming that it's gonna extend costs we won't have to do. And also same as windows, to pull down, I'm assuming that this is gonna drive down costs as far as heating and air conditioning for,
Right, so
the building.
the new windows will be energy efficient. And as I mentioned earlier, a number of them leak, so that'll eliminate the maintenance and repairs that go along with that. The concrete entranceway, with the ice melt and the drainage system in there, we'll no longer have to treat that for ice and that type of material. So that will greatly extend the life of that. And we'll just treat it semi-annual, whatever, with a treatment, and that's about it. It should be fine.
So obviously that putting ice melt system in, we're looking at over long term, that it's, we're actually a larger cost saving for maintenance, materials and so forth and so on.
Absolutely so. So there.
And the current condition of the slab is actually a liability to the city, because you got there right now, there's standing water. In the wintertime, that freezes, so that's a major liability issue, so.
Is it-
Oh, great.
Go ahead, Ron.
Bill, do you just want to go on the details of what you mean by the ice melt system?
So when we rip out the old one, we looked into, Proline is one of the local vendors out of Rhode Island that provide a service. So they have an electric ice melt, so it can be thermostatically controlled, or they can have a sensor, so if it gets wet, that'll energize the circuit, and that'll melt the snow or ice, and that'll catch, and we'll have a drainage system out, and that'll go out towards the grass. So that'll eliminate any probability of slips, falls, hopefully, and then again, the treatment of salt, and eliminate that. Yeah, thank you.
Deputy Mayor Depot?
Speaking of liability, have we talked to our insurance agent about possibly getting any credits for that, since it does eliminate liability? If you don't ask, the answer is no. But it's worth asking, because I know some insurance companies will give you credits for every little thing that you do that mitigates liability.
We can definitely broach it with them when we get it done. My guess is they look at everything as a whole, because of all of our properties on one big, they do come out and do building inspections, so it can be mentioned, especially at that point.
Thank you.
So, a couple things. If you go out there and look at the concrete now, it looks like a patchwork quilt, not a thing of beauty. It's also not level and it's not pitched. So we have several things that we have to take into account. First of all, the stairs are granite, and you're not gonna be able to do anything with them. They are what they are, and we're gonna have to put salt, sand, something down there. The reason we didn't wanna we were putting salt at one point, and the salt, the corrosiveness of the salt was eating away at the aluminum thresholds. So then we said, okay, fine, we're gonna go away from that, we're gonna go to a green product. Well, the green product started eating away at the concrete, and you would start to get cracks in the concrete, and then you get water infiltration, and then freezing, and now you get the delamination, the concrete starts to chip up. And that's what got us to where we're at now. So we were talking about this, and I've seen some things in different places, and basically there's gonna be a trough where the water will go, and we haven't decided yet whether it's gonna be little circles or whether it's gonna be little slits. But one of the things that I've been to, there's a place down in southern Connecticut where Chief, where's that place that the police do their conference? Do you remember?
Yes, it's, now I'm forgetting.
All right, there's
Put you on the spot.
Was it the AquaTurf?
that's it, AquaTurf. So you go to the AquaTurf, they do a lot of catering and a lot of weddings and stuff like that. So they have both the perforated and both the slots, and I, through visual observation, saw that even spiked heels didn't go through there, right? Because that's one of the things, you talk about liability, you know, could somebody get a heel in there and slip and fall, and now you got a problem that unseen circumstances, right? And so these are set up so that that won't be a problem. And so then you'll have your drainage system, and that'll go away. So this should solve a lot of issues, and the life of the front foyer windows will be extended. So there are savings in this whole thing. Yep, there's a little bit more we're gonna have to do for the heating system, but the cost saving on the downside is much more. So, Councilor Norris.
Was there a bid process done to identify the architects here?
We have, go ahead, Joe, you want it? Or Ron?
So a year and a half ago, we did an RFQ for engineering services, and Joe and a few other department heads were involved with the process. They interviewed everybody who submitted a proposal and narrowed it down to 4 of our quote-unquote on-call. And the theory being, going forward, you would get quotes from those 4 firms to do your due diligence. Unfortunately, with this project, this was the only firm that was interested in the project. So there was only one quote received.
So the reason we did that, Paul, was to have, I'm sorry, Councilor Norris, was to basically have a preferred vendors list, for lack of a better term. I mean, multi-award contracts. That's what I was used to in the military, or my private, the last place I worked. And so I said, can we do that here? And the utility does it, we do it too, in some places, so that's why we did that. Go ahead.
So without knowing the specs of the project, contingency?
Well, this is for the design services and all that, so generally there is no contingency needed unless, like, Mr. Uhas mentioned, if there's any changes and all that, we'll have to come back and request for additional funding if we change the scope of work, or if there's a major issue that comes up that they have to do some additional redesign or whatever. But this is the bottom line that we're looking at for this whole project.
Right. I was just talking in terms of once they do the evaluation, they may have to.
Yeah. They came out with a walk down with Joe and myself and Ron, so
Yeah,
they
we
have a pretty
went
good
through-
understanding of the scope.
Yeah, we went through a lot of the issues and concerns that we have, so they've taken that into account.
So you're looking at changing the entire framework of the windows also?
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That makes it easier.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Fine, Mr. Diaz. Okay. Anyone else, Councilor Piazza?
Thank you, Mayor. Just for knowledge sake, where does the sun rise and set according to the building?
So it rises, so this away, right? Sets of that
So if I'm standing out in the front, it's basically,
that right?
so if I'm standing out in the front, it's basically like 2 o'clock
Yeah,
and sets about 8.
correct.
Okay.
That's-
All right.
That's good, yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, yeah. Yep.
Yep. Any other questions or comments? Well, it depends on time of year,
That's right.
right? I mean, right now, we are facing north, so
Yeah.
New London is west and
Yeah.
Groton is east. Because right now, the sun sets over there. In December, the sun sets over there. So that's why I had the smile on my face, because it depends on what month you're in.
Trick question.
Presently, right. So presently, it's 2 and 8 o'clock, I'm assuming, presently. I understand that the sun does change its positions through the year. And the main reason I was asking, in my own mind, as a counselor, I'm just thinking about this whole system going in, the ice melt system going in. And I'm sure that the architects and all these people that are involved are looking at, you know, the sun, what it contributes to it, and then, of course, I'm thinking about cover. Did we look at that? It's better to cover? No, it's better to have the sun, the ice melt. So it's just all these thought processes. So that's the main reason I was asking for that information.
So let me answer that question real quick. No, this is real quick, but we did look at covering the entire front porch at one point. That was back when Tim was, Tim Ummers was here, and we looked at that, and that was extremely cost prohibitive. And I said, let's just discount, we're not gonna do that, because there's no way I'll be able to get anybody to buy into that. So, but we did evaluate that, so.
And this design will incorporate repairs to the flagpole bases and some brick repointing that's needed out in the front. So it is going to be addressing some of the other miscellaneous issues out there also.
Anything else? All right, I'll take a motion to move this to the mayor and council meeting of 9/6/22.
So moved.
Second.
Motion, we have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstentions, motion carries. Okay, 1, 2,
Thank you
3,
all.
4. All right, stay where you're at. We're gonna go to 723. This is the plan of conservation and development. We're gonna talk about the Costa property. All right, so where are we here? Let me grab all this. So let me lead off with, we received a letter from the attorney representing Nancy Costa. Remember, a month or so ago, we went into executive session to discuss that issue. We decided not to go in that direction. Now, there is a discussion that the family wants to move forward with selling of the property, executing the agreement and selling the property to the city. And we have 6 months to execute that, but they would like to know sooner than later, do we want to do that? So let me see, where do I want to go? With that, we try to provide you some information. We provided you with some information from previous mayor and councils, the resolutions and the direction that it looked like the previous mayor and councils in Freeman wanted to go in was to have this property as a whole and to use it for enjoyment. And that's what I'm bringing to you now, so you can ask questions and we can talk about it. And I had a meeting with the staff. The staff is, by and large, in agreement with moving forward with this. There was one person that said not yet, because I didn't have a detailed plan of what we were gonna do with the house or not the house. So this is not asking you what to do with the house, whether we keep the house, destroy the house and rebuild. It is, do we want to execute the agreement and then the city purchased the agreement at a predetermined price in order to have that property available for us in order to continue the enjoyment that we're gonna have and use for the park. Does that make sense, or did I just talk in circles? Okay. Now, I had Ron go back and look, and there was bonding that has been performed as a result of the properties upper and lower. And I asked if that money also included money for the house, and the answer is no. So that money, we do have money in the, what's my line item? Capital reserve. So in the capital reserve account, we have money there that we can pull from should the council decide to execute this agreement. And I would want our staff to go in and basically do an inspection to evaluate the home before we close on the home, should the council decide that you want to purchase this. And I think that's it. So, do you guys want to say anything, or do you want to wait till questions?
I think you covered it.
Okay, then Deputy Mayor Depot.
Okay, I have a couple of questions. So I just want to confirm, because I have looked at this contract before. The purchase price is set from back in 2007, when they voted on the option, correct?
That is
So
correct.
the amount that we're paying for the house, if we were to purchase it, is $286,518, regardless of the fact that everything's being reevaluated and the price of the house is probably much higher than that now. My other question, I know you looked into, the intent of the counselors and people who elected to have this option to buy the house. Looking at that list here of the Acosta Property Committee, several of these people are still local and involved. Is there any chance to have one or a couple of them that were on the committee that made this decision come to a committee of the whole and maybe chat with us of why they thought it was a good idea and what their opinion is now?
Ron, do you want to address that?
So the property was actually purchased in 2005, and the committee was put together in 2007 after the property was purchased in order to come up with the uses of the property. So it wasn't the committee who decided to buy the property?
Okay. It was the council.
Right.
Correct, and the original purchase price of the 2.2 million included the house, and then there was not being here, but just trying to research and figure out what happened. It looks like there was some negotiations going back and forth, and then they amended the original to pull out the house, which was the 286, so that came out of the 2.2 million of the original purchase, which then put this option in place, which is why that 286 is the number.
So I guess the reason that I'm asking that, it might make more sense to maybe see if someone from the council, because when they made that decision in 2005, obviously they couldn't have seen what was gonna happen for all those years up till today. And I think it would help us to make a good decision to know, looking back, if they still think it's a good idea, or if their opinion has changed, or what they think about over time. Does that make sense, what I'm thinking? Because we aren't the council who originally elected to buy the property. So I'm curious what their feeling is for if the original vision can still be done, or if they think it's still net positive. I mean, I'm guessing they will, but I think it would be helpful to have the perspective of the people who made the decision before we finalize the purchase, if we're gonna purchase it.
Okay, Joe?
That issue was brought up, and we did some research, and actually a lot of the vision of the Costa Committee back in 2009, I think it was, is very consistent with what is the current vision, whether it's a park or a visitor center or a small parking lot for the area. So there's a lot of options, and it's very consistent.
Or maybe the minutes? Are there minutes from those meetings?
Do you address the minute issue?
Uh-oh.
I could find one set of minutes.
Okay.
So I talked to somebody who was on the committee, and they said, you're probably not gonna find any minutes.
Okay.
Now, I'm not worried about that one. If you take a look at Resolution R-11-12-83,
Or 53.
second,
Is it 83 or 53?
well, that's the one I got right here. Should be the same one you have.
Wait a minute.
You got it?
Oh,
You don't
yeah,
have
yeah, on my left hand, okay.
So this is, the CASA committee recommended that, we do these things. And that's what we're doing now. And so, I'm not sure what so here's a question. The question that every council has to wrestle with at some point. Is the council obligated to do something that a previous council committed to, or can the current council either act on its own or change what was previously voted on by a council? If it's Freeman, that might be different, but if it's for the council, typically it's whatever council is in makes the decision. Now, in the last year and a half, we have had multiple workshops on Thames Street, visioning Thames Street, on the park, those kind of things. And so Sierra has some ideas. We have some ideas in-house. I didn't want to bring all the ideas to you in-house because I did not want to overload the council with all the different ideas that it could be. The real question at hand is, do we want to have that property there so that fulfills that complete square of land? And then that gives us a full palette. Whether we decide to keep the house and then renovate the house, because we haven't done a cost analysis on that. Whether we decide to tear the house down, I do have a rough estimate of about $12,000 for that, but that might change. And then, or do we tear the house down and then build new, meaning build a couple of restrooms and maybe a couple offices. One office could be for a welcome center. One office could be for the dock master for across the road, because remember, we're going in the direction of putting up 8 26-foot boat slips there, and that's going to be managed. Now, that is not going to be managed by the City of Groton staff. We don't have the staff. I do not, my intent is to go into a private public venture there, but that's something that we're gonna have to look at a little further down the road once we start working on those docks. But the upper parcel, lower parcel, the docks, usage, all that ties together. And so that's what that's why we're here today, is to talk about, do we want to exercise the agreement and purchase this house for this value? So, any other questions or comments? Councilor Sheffield.
All right, we'll start with you, Ron. Now, how much did we use the bond money on the Costa property roughly to, it's around 600,000-700,000, somewhere around there? Or was it?
I don't have the exact figures. It started with a 1994 sewer bond, was a portion of it. And then in April of September of '07, they issued 880,000 of debt for the other portion of the purchase price, even though there was authorized at the 1.16. So that's where they subtracted the 280,000 out of that issuance. So it was authorized for the full 2.2 or the 1.16, that additional portion on top of the sewer, and they only issued 880 of it. Like I said, that was September of '07.
All right, so just the dwelling itself is what's left to pay to have the complete property, and that's at 286, around that?
Yep, the 286,518.
Okay. And we were going to purchase it out of our own
It'll be from the capital funds cash on
capital
hand.
funds? So we wouldn't need to go to the Freeman, that would be,
Correct.
And
It's in the
then,
budget already to be authorized by this council.
and then, of course, with that purchase, it would be at the time taken off the tax rolls at the present time with that purchase.
That's correct.
Okay. And hopefully, again, unlike the Mother Bailey, that we left it off the tax rolls for a long time, that we move forward with something, quickly so we can develop some commerce to generate.
Yep, absolutely. I understand the comparison to Mother Bailey. In my mind, it is different than Mother Bailey in that Mother Bailey was being used as an apartment, it was all cut up and that kind of thing. Now, Mother Bailey, if things work out right, we will have a bid that we open on the 12th of September, and then shortly thereafter, we'll be able to get that back on the tax roll. This Mother Bailey took a very long period of time. As you know, you and I were on the Finance and the Community Development Committee together trying to figure out how we're gonna finance it and what we're gonna do with it.
Yep.
But this, we have some ideas, we have some plans. If the council decides to move forward with this, which I'm hoping that you do, then I will meet with staff and we will come with recommendations on whether to remodel, whether to tear it down, or whether to tear it down with the intent to rebuild. If we decide to tear it down, we will tear it down sooner than later. We're not gonna leave it up there for a long period of time.
Now, should the council do a site of the dwelling to see if it's feasible to keep up or tear down? Should that something we should consider to see if it's salvageable, the house itself, or is the initial plan is to tear it down regardless?
The recommendation from staff was to tear it down. Now, that is right? Isn't that what we,
Yes, and one of the main reasons is just because of the structural aspects of a single-family dwelling is a lot less than what would be needed for a public use space. So, when I was looking at it, it's gonna cost more to renovate it than to tear it down and build a new structure that can accommodate what we need it for.
Okay.
Deputy Mayor Depot, who had a hand? Whoops, saw a hand over here. All right, Councilor McCabe.
Just so I understand, what you're really asking for us is not what we're gonna do with it or anything like that. You're asking of us is to think about whether we want to say yes to this, what seems to me a pretty incredible deal, a price that was set many years ago for this piece of property to complete the entire area, or no?
Yes, ma'am.
Just a yes or no?
That's it.
Okay.
That's what I'm asking for. Is that kind of clear, Councilor Norris?
Apologies. It's kind of like, why would I buy something if I don't know what we're gonna do with it? So I hear what you're saying, makes common sense, because you wouldn't be able to use upstairs. It's just bulldoze it and start over. But the question would be, what would happen if we didn't purchase it?
That's an unknown. 'Cause if I recall, that's roughly a third of an acre, so it's a fairly good-sized piece of land. Current use is a permitted use. Whether somebody would want to come in and do a small commercial building, we don't know, but there's always the possibility.
You don't know who your neighbors are gonna be, but is that a reason to buy or not buy? I don't know. Right, because my intent is to get that so that the park is used. I want the park to be used. I want people on the grass looking across the river at New London. I want to get people down there on Thames Street. I want us to start utilizing Thames Street to help move Thames Street forward so we can start drawing business there, right? So which comes first, chicken or the egg? I don't know. But everything we've tried so far has not either local people are like, nope, don't want to do that today, or let's keep it quaint, which means let's not do anything, but I don't want to complain about what you've not done. But we're trying to get people to use that space. passive recreation, maybe have some concerts. There's been discussions of possible amphitheater seating and stuff like that down there. There's lots of things that can be done with this property. Go ahead.
How big is the property in total? Because I thought we already purchased a large section. Now we're just looking at purchasing the house itself.
Yeah, the current configuration is the city property is almost like an L,
Right,
and then this property's in the front. This would make it basically a square of
okay.
section, so it would be more conducive to something like an amphitheater and some other uses, whereas right now it'd be a little difficult or a lot smaller because of potential view issues.
Right. I only bring it up because it makes sense to do it, but I also see it's gonna cost $500,000 to do something there. So that's gotta be part of the conversation, you know, it's gonna cost 25 to rip it down, and another $500,000 to put something there. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but I'm just saying that's the reality. And we can't just say it's gonna cost $286 and a couple of bucks to rip it down.
Nope, you gotta take into account, in the end, you do have to take into account. So in the end, the council's gonna have to take into account what it's gonna cost to rebuild there. But does that impact whether or not you buy the property now or not?
You're right.
It may or may not. I think you can separate the two, since you're gonna tear it down. Now, I will tell you that with Mother Bailey, when we were in executive session talking about Mother Bailey, I asked the question, what is the true cost, right? You got this cost, you got abatement cost, you got this, you got this, you got that. That's your true cost plus maintenance cost. So you got the cost, plus you're gonna have the cost of the destruction of it. And then if you just left it flat, then you're there. But if the vision, if the input or recommendation from staff back to council is, we want to put this structure there, or maybe a small bit of parking there, whatever it's going to be, right? I don't know what it's going to be yet, because there's a lot of ideas on the backs of napkins, but they're not firm enough that I'm ready to bring them to you. But I don't think I need to have them now to bring them to you in order for you to make the decision, do we want to buy this piece of property that's going to complete this palette so that we can use it to paint on? Councilor Norris.
I do like the idea, I do like the project. I think what I like about it, it circularizes a vision. And I was just going from the standpoint that folks that are out there listening, they're gonna go, what are you gonna do with it? But now at least we can say there's a vision that staff is working on, which may include taking it down, put in a community type building, which may even just be a bathhouse.
Right.
You know, so at least they understand, or I can.
Well, some of the advantages is the purchase price is below market value, so that's a very good
Absolutely.
thing.
Yeah.
One is we do have a vision of the lower Costa section. And we're hoping to go out to bid probably in the spring for the docks and start the design of the lower Costa Park, which could tie into the upper portion. And maybe there'd be an opportunity to go for a grant or funding from the National Park Service, since we have the monument right there. So there's a lot of options.
And one of the recommendation was to tie our park to the state park. But again, that's not why we're here.
Right, right.
So what I didn't want to do is I didn't want to bring a lot of ancillary stuff here and get us wrapped around the axle on, oh my gosh, what color is the door going to be? When what we need to decide is, are we going to buy this piece of property or not, right? And that fulfills lots of things, I think. That's why I'm bringing it up. Deputy Mayor Depot.
Counselor Sheffield.
Oh, I'm sorry, Councilor Sheffield.
I mean, my concern is, I mean, I have that vision of something great to go down by the pier, and I looked at the previous committee that shared those ideas, and they're outstanding. But I would like, again, to see some sort of blueprint or idea put together first to where we can piece it together to make this purchase worthwhile. I don't want it to buy it, tear it down, and then it sits there, which is what we've already seen before. So I want to make sure that we're not sitting on property that's just not going to go anywhere once we buy it. And that's why I'd like to see that vision a little more before I jump and purchase it. I don't have a problem with that idea of buying it right, but I'm not seeing anything, happening at the present time. And unless, something is really going to be set up to make that purchase price worth it, to where, something's going to, there's going to be growth here in the city, and that's what I'd love to see happen. But as we've seen before, it hasn't happened that way. So I want to make sure this time we get it right. So, but it's fine.
The upper property and the lower property are separate. They are loosely tied together because they, at one point, all became the same. But we have $75,000 grant for the design of the lower part. We have the grant from the Connecticut Port Authority for the boat slips, for the 8 26-foot docks. Now, that may change depending on the cost and that kind of stuff, but that's what it was authorized for. One of the things that we've been doing in the last little bit, if you go down there and look at it now compared to what it used to be, there were stone walls up. Those have been removed. There were trees that were there. We've removed them. We've smoothed it out. We've kind of leveled it, terraced it a little bit in preparation for the next phase of it that'll come to the council about, here's the recommendations for where to put, whether it's amphitheater seating or whatever it's going to be, because there's still ideas that are out there. We haven't went out with a quote. That'll come back to you guys for this. What this purchase of this property does is that allows us to complete this, and even if you tear the house down, so if you tear it down, fill it up, and just leave that square as it is, then you've stabilized all that, and now you have something to go from. And your liability with having a building there is now gone, because the liability's gone. And then the decision on whether or not to put a new structure there is going to be based on what is our recommendation, what's the cost, when are we going to do it, those kinds of things, right? I mean, even if right now we put a couple gazebos down there, get some seating down there, I mean, that's better than what we have now. And that's relatively low cost, but we are still looking at those kinds of things for the upper part. Deputy Mayor Depot.
Councilor Piazza hasn't gotten a chance
Oh.
to speak on this yet.
Councilor Piazza.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Deputy Mayor Depot. I think just one side we haven't looked at as far as the cost of family. I'm assuming, because I remember speaking about this before in the executive session, so I'm assuming to move forward with this, if we were, is beneficial to them also.
That is correct.
Okay. So, with that thought of, so when we're talking about demolition of the building, what it sounds like, if we moved forward, about, what are we looking for as far as a closing date on it? How soon could that be?
I believe based on the agreement, we have 6 months to execute the agreement, the option, and then once that option is agreed to, it's no more than 60 days for the closing.
Okay.
But it can be sooner than that. That's just
The family is interested in closing. Initially, when we got the letter, they wanted to close by close of business in August. We can't get there from here.
Right. So once all this would be complete, let's say if we move forward and we agreed, then is the plan to actually do the demolition of the house immediately, or how far are we looking for that? Because I'm looking at it as if we don't move fast enough, or, you know, supposedly it's a better idea to take it down, as far as I'm understanding, you know, how long is the house gonna sit abandoned, which presents other further issues.
Understand. Do you want to address
Yeah.
what we talked about in,
You know, that's something that we'd
Staff
be
meeting?
looking at as part of, because when we met with staff and all that, Bill and I were assigned the task of, as we get closer to closing, to go in, take a look at the structure at that time, you know, we can take a look at it, okay. Kind of see how much work is it gonna need if we wanted to keep it, or would it be better to you know, demolish the building and all that, so. We haven't been inside yet, so we don't know the condition of it. But right now, the assumption is it'd probably be best to demolish it, just because it is a single-family dwelling, and just the normal construction of it would not be conducive for a commercial structure.
And
well, to answer your question a little, I'll try to give it a date. One of the things we talked about was sooner than later, no more than a year. So we would want to do that sooner than later, and we have to figure out how to do, you know, what that means. Once we close and we own it, I'd want to come back to the council again with a firm, here's what we're recommending, or here's what we recommend now, to run it by you guys, and then go off and do the demolition.
so if I understood that if it was, if the demolition was to happen, did I hear a price approximately about 12,000? What, am I wrong on that?
That is correct, and actually, that's a higher number, and that's based on some demolition activity that has occurred in the past 2 years within the city for similar-sized structures.
And I'm assuming, since I grew up in this, so that house has been there for a while, so I'm looking at, you know, lead abatement, you know, so I'm not sure how much that is gonna drive the cost of the demolition, and of course, we're looking at our neighbors and, you know, who else is gonna come in.
That's all
and-
accounted for.
Okay,
Yeah.
all right.
Unless we've run into some unknown,
And that's why we want to do our inspection.
Right, right.
You know, there's a possibility there's some lead, maybe in the lead paint. And there's, depending on what kind of insulation, there may be
Right,
asbestos in the
asbestos,
piping. But based on the date, and we saw, we didn't think PCBs would be an issue. But we do want to go in there and do our inspection. But I didn't want to send these guys out doing the inspection until I get some kind of a consensus from you guys. You guys on where we want to go with this.
Thank you.
Now, Deputy Mayor
Well,
Depot?
I was just trying to be fair.
Nope, I'm good. I just want to make sure I got you.
So, I think the last thing I wanted to say is, in my mind, the least expensive use of the property. So if we were to buy it and do nothing else other than knock it down and add that space to the park that's already there. I just went down there a couple days ago, maybe Saturday, to the Thames View Park. And it is like an L, and then the house is like plopped right in front of the property that we own. And I know, I had talked to the mayor in the past about the path up to Fort Griswold, because I know people who have gone up that way from Thames Street. You can go up to the Fort Griswold property, the state park, but it's not like a clean path, I don't think. So it'd be kind of, in my opinion, it'd be nice to get that cleaned up, and having the whole square of the property will make designing and effective use of that property make more sense. So I think, in my view, even if we bought it and just knocked it down to make that whole space uniform and use as a park, it does fit our vision of using it as recreational space and passive recreation work more. So even that use, the least useful use, it would make sense to me. Does that make sense? I don't know. I feel like I'm talking in a circle.
Councilor Piazza?
Mayor, butted off of that, and this is probably just lack of knowledge on my part, is, so when, I know we talked about that before, there was visioning and some of the things we did look at, and part of that was like, basically merging up to Fort Griswold. So since we've gotten the grants for the boat slips, the boat docks, So it sounds like that we also could apply for grants to extend that. If we tie into state property, because it's a state park, are we still available to get grants for that? Or do we come into this whole thing, it's a state park, and then it moves in, and, does that get, I don't want to say kind of cloudy or not, I'm not sure, it's lack of my knowledge in reference to that, when we're merging into a state property, does the vision get kind of clouded? And then we're inviting more problems, or, I'm just looking down the road, although I know, like Councilor McCabe said, this is just a yes, no, if we're gonna purchase it, but it's just something that's running in my head.
Okay, state property is state property, this property is our property. So we may decide to go after grants to do something here, but I don't know if they'd be state or federal grants. I'm all about if we can get grants, I'd like to get grants and use, to execute our vision. We have to have what our vision is, but I'm not sure I fully understand what your concern is.
I think it's
Because
just an
we-
idea of, like, if
we
we're
would-
merging up to state property, are we looking down the line for the council to make decisions that, well, we didn't realize this, and I know probably these things can't be answered anyway, but have we even thought about that merging up into state property? Are we gonna, is it gonna push us back on a vision, or is it going to move us forward even faster, and get into grants, and yes, we'd like to merge, and that would be, those kind of things.
Oh, I don't know, I don't think that's the reason we're not buying this piece in order to get, if this piece were butt up against state property, that'd be a different thing, but it's not, it's down in the front. It's nowhere near, not really nowhere near, but it's pretty far away from where the state property is. If we decide that we're going to do our portion, we would work with the state. I'd call whoever the ranger is up there, because the guy that's up there now is getting ready to change out. And talk to him and talk about what can we do together, what collaboration can we do to join ours and join his, because there's a separation. They would have to do their part, get funding for it, we'd have to do our part, get funding for it, and I don't think the city can go after a state fund for a state park, because we don't have a state park, right? So, it was an idea about, hey, we could do this also. Did anybody think about that? About connecting that, but that's just another potential use for that whole property. I don't know if that answered your question or not, but.
That's why I was asking, because that
Okay.
was brought up. So if that was still in the vision and kind of forefront, it is something to think about.
Okay, Councilor Norris?
Is the property vacant now?
Do we know? I don't. Ron?
I am not sure at this time. I've had a couple of calls with Attorney Collier, and that hasn't been discussed, and I have another one with him tomorrow. Hopefully, we're gonna reconnect.
All right.
But I can get back to you on that.
I was only asking for the standpoint, if there is, and we purchase, does that person need to vacate the property?
Okay, so let's address that real quick. Go ahead.
So we're looking at the original option to purchase real estate on 352 Thames agreement.
Right.
There's no amendments to it, so this is truly that option that there would no longer be in the residence.
Right. We've had a discussion. We're not going down that path. We're purchasing the property and we're not gonna become landlords or anything else. That means the property is available, which means it's vacated or will be vacated soon. And then we'll execute. But yeah, we're not gonna add a search just for the property. All right, so here's my question to council. Do you have enough information now that you want to move this to the next meeting? Or do you need additional information in order to make a decision? Because, again, typically when I bring things to you, it is with my expectation that you guys approve it. If you don't have enough, I'm not looking for rubber stamp. I'm looking to ensure that I've given you enough information that you can make an informed decision on this. If you need more information, I need to bring this back in September, I will. Or you can ask your question and we can see if we can answer tonight and then decide to move forward. But I wanted to kind of get an idea where you guys are tonight.
Speaking for myself, I have enough information and ready to move forward with an approval of the purchase.
Okay,
Absolutely.
okay.
I wouldn't mind 30 days, just to see if there's some, ideas of what to do.
Well, I'm gonna need to know what you're gonna want then if you wanna go 30 days, but I'll talk to you.
Thank you. I think it's just knowing, I think the questions I asked, so like, forget it, we get the property, I'm looking at, it's a vacant piece of property and the maintenance of it. So if the demolition is gonna move faster, because we think that's the best way to go, as far as I'm looking at our experts. And then obviously the maintenance would be a little bit easier, so I would move forward with that.
I will assure you that it is not my intent for the city to grab this property and hold on to the property. We have a most recent lesson learned, and I'm not willing to learn that lesson again. Okay? I am doing everything we can to move the Mother Bailey house and to get that back on the tax rolls. The intent is not to have this and just say, hey, let's see what we can do with this. The intent is to move forward and execute a plan that we will bring to you shortly after it's purchased. Okay? With that, then, I'll I'll get with you to see if I can answer your questions, but I'm still looking, based on what I have here, I'm gonna move this forward. I'll take a motion to move this to the mayor and council meeting of 9/6/22.
So,
Moved.
second.
So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain? Opposed? Okay, we have one opposed. Counselor Sheffield. Okay, and that's 1, 2, 3, 4 to 1, 4 to 1 to 0, that motion passes. Okay, that's it. Thank you both. All right, Ron, thank you. All right, so now we're gonna move Ron and Josh, or Josh, whoever's gonna present Groton Utilities. I think you guys know Josh, and I know you know Director Gaudet. So we have 8 items from the utility. These were recently moved and passed by the Groton Utilities Commission, so we're now bringing them in front of you. The first one is AAIS. So who do we have here? All right,
Basically, I'll probably do the first two, and then Josh will probably finish them out.
okay.
And the reason being is the first two are related to PCB removal at the filtration plant, and I know we have a history on that. When the project was moving forward, the project abated all the PCBs, abated, remediated, and repainted and coated everything that the project touched. And as we know, that resulted in multiple change orders. That was all considered phase 1. Phase 2 of the PCB abatement was that when the EPA was made aware, and the state inspector was made aware of the PCB issue, they said, we want to know the full scope of all the PCB issues. And they said, we want a commitment that you're gonna do not only everything that the capital project is touching, but we want you to finish it up. So at that point, the utility made a commitment to do that within 5 budget years of the closeout of the project, committing that we would commit about up to $500,000 a year to move forward and get that done, not knowing what the costs were. So we moved forward with that approach. We are now submitting the next two. AAIS is the PCB removal firm that it does the abatement, and Celtic Painting is the painting company that does the special coating that goes over and seals it so that we never have to touch it again. So with these two purchases, phase 2 is complete, and we're doing that within 2 years of the completion of the project. So we came out, I won't say it's good because a lot cheaper than we thought, but at least this closes out all PCB issues as it relates to the the filtration plant itself. The first one is the removal, and the second one for Celtic painting is the recoating. And I'll let questions drive.
Okay, questions for Deputy Mayor Depot?
So I guess this isn't directly related to this part, phase 2, but since you brought up phase 1 and doing it during the wastewater treatment plant, I know we've discussed in the past, are we going to get a holistic review of that project, what the initial cost proposed was, what our cost at the end of the project was, that kind of thing? I know we discussed that before because the PCBs were one of the main reasons why that project cost more than we expected, correct?
Correct. The PCBs were probably, I'm gonna estimate 75% of contingency.
So, I know we've talked about this before, and, you know, a lot of times we get a proposal and we get these cool graphs and everything of what we're gonna do for a project, and then we don't get a postmortem at the council. And I know that you guys probably do that as department heads, but we don't always get to see that, and we've talked about doing that. Is that something that we're gonna do for that project?
So, the plan for the utility is to do a postmortem. Believe it or not, the last $600,000 payment, which the state closed the project for us. They paid us all the borrowed money that we were doing. It was put into reserve, capitalized as the project finished. And as R.H. White does their closeout and cleanup and removes us from the site, they still owe us some as-builts and stuff. So the very, very last payment, we're still withholding. So post-mortem for us is a little bit after the state closed the project and things, because we haven't even started to recover from that totally all the way.
I wasn't
But
implying that you were delaying it, because I
Yeah, right.
totally get the invoicing and the, making the payments is not done yet, 100%.
So,
I just it hasn't come up in a while, so I just figured while we're talking about PCBs, it'd be a good time to bring it up.
Right, no, and when I said it, I actually said we would do that. I
Okay.
have told you guys we'd do that, and also, I believe the mayor expects it, and I know that the utility commission would like a rundown too.
Okay. Any other, Counselor Norris?
20% contingency, why only 20?
Can we answer that?
You can if you want.
I'll be honest with you, we picked 20 because when we talked with, with Rick Stevens and Ray Valentini, who are both retiring, Rick actually did retire, they felt completely comfortable within that number.
Okay.
Yeah, and just a comment on the contingencies. When the utility's putting in contingencies, ideally, traditionally, we're always 10%. We have lived through the 15, 20, even a few 30% in this room. We have multiple people that get involved, and we also have finance involved pushing the contingency down. We have people that are nervous that are pushing the contingency up. There's a lot of thought that goes into that number. We're not just trying to pad it, but one of the main things that goes into it is risk of the need to move expeditiously should we need to get more funding.
Right.
That's the biggest risk for the utility.
I was just going from the standpoint because we did a couple of projects that had like a 30 or a 40% contingency, so that's why it was.
Yeah, the transmission project has been
Right. Yeah.
dynamic,
Okay.
to say the least.
Thank you.
Counselor Sheffield?
Ron, how often will this need to be done after this phase here? Will it,
This is it.
this is it?
This is it.
Okay.
Done.
Done.
It's
Okay.
been done on the water.
All right.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, I'll take a motion to move AAIS to the mayor and council meeting of 9/6/22.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Well, he just did.
Aye.
Oh, sorry. I thought he was gonna ask questions.
Did everyone vote?
Yes.
Okay, good. Did it pass? 'Cause I got distracted.
Yes.
Okay, so it
I got
passed.
distracted too.
All right.
You raised your hand, I thought you had a question.
Okay, I'll take a motion to move Celtic to 9/6/22.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any discussion? All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Okay, good. All right. Charge point?
Yes, sir. It's gonna be me.
All right, go ahead, Josh.
This is for two two electric vehicle chargers outside the municipal building with two dual ports each. So you're actually gonna be getting 4 electric vehicle chargers outside. The reason that we decided to lease these instead of purchase them is 25% of electric vehicle chargers currently deployed are broken. And we don't currently have an electric vehicle maintenance guy that works for us. So by leasing these products from a company right outside Boston, that's actually one of the top 5 vendors in the country, we're going to have service within an hour and a half of our, that's not guaranteeing that same day service, but it's guaranteeing somebody local is here to service our EV chargers when something goes wrong.
Deputy Mayor Depot.
Where did we get that number of broken
AAPA.
EV chargers?
Do you want to talk to them?
Last week, the commission was invited to a APPA, American Public Power Association training, and that's one of the things, last week's training was on electric vehicles and education for utilities about that, and that was one of the numbers that they brought up at that training, that using current surveys, more than 20%, about a quarter of the electric chargers, if people plug into them, aren't working. So it's one of the advantages of Tesla, because they let you schedule your charger ahead of time, you know, electronically via your car, and it's actually an issue right now. So our charger at Washington Park is purchased. It has broken several times, and that created the questions, and that will probably be moved this way later. I don't want to take your thunder.
No, you're fine. And Commissioner Norris, the reason I picked 10% is because it's a fixed price, but I'm not going to come with 0 for you.
Can I continue?
I don't know, where am I? Here. Deputy Mayor
My next question was gonna be about the Washington Park Chargers. So thank you for answering that ahead of time. I am glad that we looked into the, pros and cons of owning versus leasing. I know, because this is new technology relatively, that it seems to make sense to lease it instead of owning it, especially when we don't have someone who can repair them on hand. Is this also going to be open to the public? Or, I know that we talked last time about being able to, I think we brought this up before at Cal, right? Being able to charge any vehicles we purchase, any electric vehicles, with this number of chargers. Does that mean we don't have any electric vehicles currently, or do we have some?
We have 1.
So there's not a chance that the public won't ever be able to use it because we need it, our needs are too high, right?
Correct. So let me address where you're going with this. So we have charging station at Washington Park, which we're not currently charging for. We're not charging the public. It's free. It's part of Goodwill. It's also part of letting people know the chargers are there and getting people used to charging and those kind of things. At some point, we will shift to charging for the charger. For the 2 chargers here, we're gonna have 2 chargers, 2 umbilicals per charger. Based on the charging rates and the expectation for vehicles here in the city, we could maintain a fleet of 12 electric vehicles. So we do not anticipate that they'll be on an umbilical the entire time, so the public can use it. I'm also going to continue to work with the Eastern Point Historic District on getting an electric charging station down at the beach. So there's been some resistance in the past, but, they'll let you put electric splits in your house, so why can't I put a charging station so you can see it, right? So mini splits. So I haven't taken that discussion to them, but I will. Ron?
One last comment. Everybody has range anxiety. The other thing we have to realize is that we do have an electric vehicle that's driven by the business development group, and it's only plugged in once a week for the hours it takes to charge, which is very minimal. So you can maintain a fleet, especially with the city as a boundary, and there's only a little bit of it. It's just like filling your tank. It is just like filling your tank. It's not a daily thing unless you're driving 300 miles a day. So it's, once everybody gets over the range anxiety, they'll understand you don't have to have a charger there all the time.
Councilor Norris?
If you don't mind me asking, I see the construction cost, but what's the cost of the lease itself?
So that is supposed to be, that is the cost of the lease.
Okay,
I apologize, that is definitely a wrong word that got copy pasted over.
that's okay. So is there the cost of installation is being,
The cost of the installation is coming to the utility.
got it, thank you.
Any, Deputy Mayor?
Sorry, just to piggyback on Counselor Norris, a couple pages in, it's a 5-year contract that includes construction of the
Yep.
installation. Includes hardware and installation, software activation, so it's all included in the 5-year agreement, right? For the,
Just the chargers. The parking spots will be lined by Public Works. The line is being installed by another budgeted line item in the utility, the plug, you know, to bring the power out there and to bury it using, we'll use Public Works labor to because the line has to go out underneath the sidewalk and the curb replaced, and the spots are gonna be changed a little bit so that they're handicap accessible.
So there are some additional costs, you know, to get the power out there, to dig up, to cover up, that kind of thing. But this is for the charging station itself, for the lease. Any other questions or comments? Councilor Sheffield?
Ron, I guess CMEC is funding this project. Will they be the primary?
You wanna answer?
Yeah, it's gonna be primarily paid for using our Reggie funds with CMAC.
Okay, and they're going to be pretty much how we fund future electric vehicles? Is that something they normally do, or is it something we just had?
Pending fund availability. So that's a non-answer.
That's a non-answer.
Well, right now,
Okay.
we have money in the Reggie funds, and so the money's available, so we'll take it out of Reggie funds. If later on, if we decide to put charging stations up and we have money in Reggie funds, we'll use that. If not, then we'll find another source of funding.
Okay.
Doesn't have to be Reggie funds.
Well, I was just wondering if that's going to be something down the line where we'll be, you know, for future electric vehicle chargers, will CMEC be providing the funding for those?
Yeah, remember, these funds are actually conservation funds coming from the state as we do other projects and lower demands. So technically, it's being paid for by the distribution and the electrical system and passed through CMEC.
Right.
Those funds availability aren't guaranteed at any given point and aren't always routine. So.
And not always available?
And they're not always available.
Okay.
We do have an account that currently has money in it, and we're trying to use it.
Okay.
So because we try to use it, we find another project that we can fund with it, such as LED lights on poles, such as multiple other projects that we do for the city. We use that funding just right across the board.
Okay.
Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Go ahead.
Just one point of clarity, I wanted to make sure it's understood that 26,400 is for the 5-year term of it's for the entire contract of the lease. It's not a yearly cost.
Okay. All right, perfect. Any other questions or comments on this motion? Okay, I'll take a motion to move this to the mayor and council at 9/6/22.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Okay, Burns and Mac?
Yeah.
You doing these or am I?
I'll do them, but we did miss one on the
I
agenda.
think we're on 4, was it
Oh, we
Yeah.
missed,
Yep, we missed one. I just want to.
S&C
Well-
Electric?
oh, S&C Electric. Okay, let's do
S&C
S&C Electric.
So the S&C Electric is for a piece of switchgear that will allow us to continue to use the current distribution that we feed our entire system off of to supply 2 customers. That there are 2 customers within Groton Utilities territory that aren't supplied at 13.8 like the rest of the system. And at some point, they will eventually be going up to do that. And this will allow us to be ready for them when they are ready to upgrade, but also in the meantime, until they do upgrade, it will lower our risk on, as Groton Utilities. Currently, it's almost impossible to find the replacement parts that those customers need if one of their transformers happens to go out. And it's not just like a supply chain almost impossible, it's like actually almost impossible. Nobody's making them anymore. So we need to purchase this piece of machinery so we can continue to keep our customers where they are without them having an extreme economic burden. And then this will allow them to, as they're able to budget for the changeover, and they'll be able to make that with everybody else, and we'll be prepared for them.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Depot.
So the sheet with the resolution on it says to be paid from fiscal year '23 electric non-bonded capital, but the next page says it's coming out of the 2016 electric bond fund.
I will say that the version I have has it coming out of the 2023 budget.
Where did you? Okay, yeah, this should not be from the bond fund.
It should not be from the bond fund.
Should be
Electric only
non-bonded.
bonded the transmission project.
Right,
The
this is
rest
non-bonded capital.
The rest is non-bonded capital.
So that's incorrect.
Okay. Very bottom.
Are we in a where are we, in the warehouse?
No,
No,
it's
no,
in
no.
the financials.
Whereas
on
is
the-
fine, but if you look at the
It's in the
action
financials
item
here.
sheet,
That's the,
okay.
that's the old draft.
So, when the action items are submitted to the director's office, they go to finance, Ron Uhas and E after. So the second page, the resolution and the action item have been proofed. This is the form that's submitted by the group or the organization, and it doesn't always have the right funding, because E may say, no, that's not right. So that's what happens. It's the resolution that's important.
well, it's all important, right? I mean, council gives the information and, you know, one thing council says is this says this, then this says that. What is it? I mean, it goes back to credibility for the company
So,
and trust and confidence, that kind of thing. But,
well, in the old days, we didn't put this in,
so why are you putting it in now?
because what we do is we actually provide the council with the entire package that is provided to the office to make it. So this is the cover page to the proposal,
I understand.
and so the council gets a lot more detail than it used to get 7 years ago.
Well, and that's good.
So so the backup's there, and, you know, we can talk it through.
Okay, but the bottom line is, the correct is FY '23 electric non-bonded capital. That is the correct source of funding.
Yes, sir.
Okay, did you get your question? Okay, any other questions, Counselor Norris?
I have all night. What's a switchgear?
So the switchgear is it's a really cool piece of machinery that basically what it does is it allows us to feed, and as soon as that feed dies, it picks up another feed. So right now, those customers we bring in at 13.8, but that's not what I can't remember the name of it, the exact, it's like 480 or something like that. It's super obsolete voltage. And what the switchgear will allow us to do is feed that way on both sides, but then it will allow us to come out and feed to their transformers at what their transformers need. As we make one of the transformers obsolete, we then get to feed that customer at 13.8 off our switchgear. The other benefit of a switchgear is these are 2 manufacturing companies.
Okay.
They have a large enough load on us that if one of the feeders dies, just for instance, if the feeder that comes from the left side dies out, the feeder from the right side will pick up and immediately start pulling the load for those customers, and they don't experience an outage that way.
Cool. Thank you.
Giant light switches.
That would have been a much better way to explain it.
I got it. Thank you.
Any other questions or comments on this motion? Hearing none, I'll take a motion to move this to the mayor and council meeting 9/6/22.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention, motion carries. Okay, now Burns and Mac.
I'm sorry. Previously, we had brought Burns and McDonald for a construction manager to you guys for a transmission line. This is to complete the remainder of the transmission line, but the reason it is the value that it is it's also for our construction manager for Buddington Substation. We're going to begin construction there hopefully in the middle of September. And we'd really like to have on somebody that's built a couple hundred of these things, and he can be on the ground to meet the staffing demand that will be required. Because it's not just an employee physically being there as somebody from GU as the circuit holder. It's more so somebody that's been there and has done this many, many times and will be able to identify even the smallest thing that looks wrong.
Questions? Councilor Sheffield?
Mayor, I wasn't here in June 1st of 2020 regarding a memorandum of understanding with Eversource. Can someone give me an explanation of what that entails, or?
So it's the MOU with Eversource just allows us to use each other, the vendors that each other company is using, so that way we can have continuity on this project. Our side of this project is very small in comparison. I know we're talking about $15 million. The grand scheme of this project is over $600 million. So it just allows us, it also allows the other local municipals that are affected by this project too, to come in and we can all use the same type of vendor that's already been vetted and gone through the entire Eversource process.
And you get economies of scale as well.
Yeah, the part of the MOU that we have does guarantee that they have to charge Groton Utilities the same rate that they charge Eversource. We cannot be charged any more than they already have a contract with.
Okay, any other questions or comments on this? Okay, hearing none, take a motion to move this to the mayor and council of 9/6/22.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Thank you. All right, Howard Industries?
This is the same, well, I kind of came to you guys with a small scale of this back in July. It's the much larger souped up scale that I told you was coming. This will purchase 72 transformers, both pad mount as well as overhead transformers for our pole tops. And one of the really cool things that I do want to emphasize here is these pad mounts aren't just for storage for Groton Utilities inventory. We are buying the pad mounts now for 4 projects that we know are happening, 1 in the city, 3 in the town of Groton. So we can prepare to help support the economic development that the towns and the city want to do without having to go on a 1-year lead time to get these pieces of equipment.
We also want to get these on order because so far we've had a fairly smooth storm season. But if we have a storm season that's active anywhere in the United States and suddenly they need transformers, that's going to take from the supply that we need. So we're in competition with everybody else when it comes to transformers. Does that make sense?
Is our inventory sufficient at the moment, or is it sort of depleted and we need to generate more? Or?
Tell the truth.
You want me
Tell the truth.
We need to order.
I want
We're
to.
low.
We're low, okay.
I will be clear though, to make you feel assured. We can get through several storms. We need, the urgency behind this order is that this one's brought to you guys, and I believe the average lead time on this one's 58 weeks, somewhere around there. We went out to bid for this, in accordance with the purchasing policy, and some of the vendors were quoting us 187 weeks, which, not that great at math, but that's a little over 3 years. So we wanted to make sure we got this to you guys with the lead times that we were guaranteed of just about a year. before we see those go up too.
Right. So the answer is, we do have transformers. We do have, so the utility has a, stock, but I was gonna say a program where they evaluate, and they don't wait till they empty out and say, oh, there's a gap, there's a hole there, probably ought to fill that. They try to keep a certain amount on board. And one of the things that we've identified in the last couple of years and we're dealing with now is supply chain issues and lead time issues. And so this is why I want to get these on order now. Councilor Norris.
So do these things have a shelf life? No?
Not really. If we take care of them, we preserve them, we have them over there when we're using them, or when we're not using them, they are in containment pads.
Oh, they are?
Yeah,
Okay.
and we do go out and we do perform monthly checks just to make sure that our inventory looks good. Because, and that's partially to maintain the inventory, but also because in the event of a storm, we don't want a guy going out with a broken transformer and possibly getting himself hurt more.
Right.
So, and to the mayor's point, there's also a ceiling. The utility does not order past this amount of transformers. So it's not like you're gonna drive over one day and just see a whole stockpile of transformers sitting in our parking lot.
No, I was just wondering if they sit for 5 years, do they internally corrode, that kind of stuff?
As long as the squirrel stays out, we're fine.
Stay on top of that.
Any other questions or comments on this resolution? Okay, I'll take a motion to move this to mayor and council at 9/6/22.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. All right, three-phase construction, Buddington Substation.
Yeah, this is actually probably the most exciting thing I've brought to anybody since I've been here. We're about to start construction of Buddington Substation pending city council approval at your meeting on the 6th. If we get that, we are fully prepared to move right ahead and just go right into our schedule. We're in a very good situation. It is a substantial amount of money, but this also covers our civil engineering, of which includes $900,000 of cement work. And that was actually the lowest bid that we got back on cement. But this is a three-phase construction, is a very good company. George Scully brought them up during the UC meeting. They're very reputable in our area, and they've been working with us so for the last couple months and on and off for little spot things, and they're really doing fantastic work for us. And again, we extended this to the UC, but if any council members, if anybody needs a tour or wants to see what you're visibly spending the money on, we'd be more than happy to share what our hard work's been provided.
So last week, I went to talk to Josh and Bruce about projects. I get a monthly review on all the projects. And after that, they took me down to Buddington Substation. If you haven't been to Buddington Substation, it's on the corner of Buddington and 184. It's near the Honda shop, right? That's
Yeah.
Honda, okay? And then you see the substation, and go over and take a look, and on the far end, you'll see a bunch of A-frames. They're gonna duplicate those A-frames in the middle to bring the power in. And then if you turn around and look up the hill, you'll see some vegetation starting to grow, but that was cleared, slick. And now you'll see, that was all cut down. There's some roads that were put in, and you'll see the poles that are coming in with the lines. So this is where your money's going. This project is, one, going to increase capacity, two, is gonna increase capability, and three, it'll increase resiliency. So that's what this is gonna do for us in the future. So if you want a tour down there, reach out and they'll get you a tour. It's pretty impressive what this is going to do. So any other questions? Okay, with that, I'll take a motion to move this to mayor and council meeting of 9/6/22.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Okay, three-phase construction transmission lines.
Sorry. Yeah, this is part of the same project, the ECT project. The same as the last one I did forget to mention, it's PTF reimbursable, so, as part of the ECT project. So in this one, we had been selected, we had gone with a different vendor. They've completed the 1280 line, so if you are down there, you will notice that there are very high metal structures. And we have finally completed that stage. This is for the 400 and the 1410 lines, which is, the 400 comes out of service starting September 22nd. We plan to do that work during that outage while we're rebuilding Buddington. But what I want to emphasize about this one is you've already approved an amount of money higher than this to go to a different vendor that's no longer on this project. So we're not going to be using the same vendor. We're going to be utilizing a new vendor. But I wanted to make sure I reiterated that point to you guys, so that way you don't see 2.5 and then 1.3 and wonder where how our budget's looking. Our budget looks, it looks secure right now. And this is just money that we're reallocating to a different vendor to complete the same job.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Depot.
Do we not need to rescind that resolution that we authorized the other payment to the other vendor for?
No, because it's spent, good portion spent. So there's just gonna be a negative change order, and we'll close it.
Okay.
Wait a minute, hold on. I got what you're saying. Why do I not need to rescind that? We've
Because
already
we-
spent money?
The utility looks for permission to spend, and we don't normally spend everything that was approved in the resolution. We only spend what is necessary. We close the order, we manage by the project level, and we make sure we come in under budget.
So you're saying that there was a resolution approving money for this same work?
Yes, same work.
Okay, but that work wasn't
So
done
that
with
work-
that money?
Was it completed?
I-
Did they do some work?
They completed the 1280 line, which was, so that's partially on that PO. They also completed right away, they completed movement of our poles, which weigh about 40,000 pounds. We have no way to actually move those. So they did that part for us as pre-setup, but the original purchase order also covered a scope of work that this one doesn't hit the entirety of that purchase order because that's already been done. So this purchase order is strictly for three-phase line construction to come in on the 400 line, set the poles, shift the transmission line over, and then run OPGW, which is optical ground wire.
Okay, so let's talk about these two resolutions. So the one resolution was approved, part of the work was done. The company either doesn't exist or quit or
They got fired.
they got fired. Was there money left on that purchase order?
Yes, sir.
So there was money left on that purchase order, so we spent part of the money. We don't have a, well, hold on, let me finish before I get to what we don't have. So this is to authorize the completion of the work with this amount of money.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I see where you're going. I don't think we have a mechanism to partially rescind, because either you rescind it or you don't, right? And so it's not like you rescind it, we'll just say, okay, they have spent money, they were fired, we have extra money, part of that money will go to this if needed. But this is what they're asking for authorization for this project. Is that accurate, or am I in a circle here?
That's good.
Okay, did that answer your question?
Kind of.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay. So the other resolution that we did, whenever that was, that was supposed to include all of this work.
As well as the 1280.
So, does this work, added to the amount we already spent for the other portion that was approved, exceed the amount that other resolution approved? Does the project cost more now?
No. The project costs less now. The
Okay.
three-phase came in and gave us the exact rate that they gave Eversource. And
Okay.
that was able to help us out there.
So the other company that we fired was actually more expensive anyways?
Yes,
So we're coming out better
correct,
switching companies
correct.
and a more reputable company?
At this point, much more reputable.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, overall, I'm gonna put you on the spot. I'm not asking for specifics. I'm asking for in general, cost, scope, schedule of the transmission project.
Do you have that packet? Do you have the, just?
No, just
Okay.
talk.
All right, so on schedule, we are actually, for Buddington Substation, I want to start there. As far as this cost goes, we're pacing about 10% plus or minus, and we're looking really good there. We're pretty happy with that one. The scheduled Buddington substation was due to be completed by ISO New England by July 1st of 2023. We are looking to have Buddington completed on on February 6th of 2023. So 4 months early. The budget so far, despite the fact that this budget was built in 2017, so pre-pandemic, pre-supply chain catastrophes, Ron has helped us out a lot. We've called in some other people. We've done a lot of work here, and we're still going. That $15.2 million budget is still the budget that we're operating under, and nobody at this moment has even really considered coming back to you guys and saying we're going to need more money.
Okay, so my point is, cost, scope, schedule, we're on track. Okay? And now, and one of the things that we've done the last couple of years is we have, Josh is tracking this, right? He's bird dogging this to make sure that we're gonna continue to meet this. All right, any other questions on this? With that, I'll take a motion to move this mayor and council of 9/6/22.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Thank you both.
Thank
All
you.
right,
Thank you.
the Groton Utilities Financial number 561, we did not put in your packet. That was an oversight on our part. We will give you the information for, I know it's been a couple months. We're gonna give you the information. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna give you the end of the year information for the utilities. We're gonna give you the July for the utilities, and Ron will review them at the next meeting. And then we'll also give you an update on where we stand on the municipality on the budget. So we'll do that at the next meeting.
Thank you.
All right, it is currently 8:30. There's one thing that I did not put on here and I forgot. But that is, are you guys interested in a quick update on Branford Manor? Because if you are, we'll just add it to the agenda. I'll take about 10 minutes and update you, and then we'll be done. More pending questions, obviously. So I'm looking for a consensus. What do you think? If you say no, I'm okay with this. I mean, I have been forwarding you
You have.
emails. So if you're reading your emails, which I hope you are, I've been forwarding you a lot of information. There's a lot of information that's out there. So it's up to you. If you want another quick 10-minute, I can do that. I am going to the committee of the whole tomorrow for the town, because they're gonna put this on their it's on the cow for tomorrow, and I'm gonna go talk to them. Steve Mansfield is gonna talk to them from the mold perspective to try to clear up some issues and try to let people understand what the process is and what there is a spec on, what there isn't a spec on, and those kind of things. And I think that's about it.
The information I've been getting in via email has been pretty comprehensive.
Okay.
So I'm
Well,
good.
I'm trying to get
Yeah.
you information, and I want you guys to have the information that I have. You don't have everything that I have, but by and large, you have most of the information that is out there. Councilor Piazza.
Without going in 10-minute discussion about it, but is there a quick answer to, do we have, as far as people being out of their places, has the percentage increased? Is it the same or has it lowered going into the school year? I know that was one of the big issues.
Well, I don't know the specifics. I do know that Branford is opening, so I think the last number I have is 6, and they're trying to get 6 more units this week open so that they can bring people from the hotels back in. One of the challenges you run into is this gets into mold. There is no standard on what's considered, there's no PEL, there's no permissible exposure level for mold. right? And mold goes anywhere from black mold all the way to Aspergillus penicillin, right? Aspergillus. And it depends on what your sensitivity is. The other thing is that the Brantford Manor guys are remediating mold, and then they're using the standard that they have, which is doing a swipe or a swab, and then the attorney goes in with an airborne test and does an airborne test, and now you got apples and cats, right? So you can't compare a surface with a volumetric rate. But the attorney's saying, nope, you got mold here, so we're gonna let them back in. That's one of the challenges that they're having there, is that two different sets of rules. Deputy Mayor?
Can I address part of what the question was about too? So Brantford expressed that they are interested in making sure that no one is in a hotel by the time school starts, which is this coming week, I believe. There also was a person that works in the public school system, reached out, and we connected them to try to make sure that anyone that is in a hotel has transportation to school paid by Brantford Manor, or free, or something. Someone from the public school system is working on arranging that if it is a problem when school starts. Does that make sense? They're trying to get people into those units. They cleared
Right.
units and put furniture in them, so people won't have to move all their stuff into that unit. It'll be furnished so that they can live on the premises and get regular bus transportation the way they would if they were in their unit. But it is also up to those residents and or their attorney whether or not they stay in a hotel or go into those vacant units.
In addition to that, Brantford had a picnic on Friday, and I talked to Susan Austin, who's superintendent of schools, and talked to the core group of people that were there, that were working with the parents, and they've been in touch with all the parents that are in the hotels to work on a way to get their kids to school. Whether that's gonna be a bus, whether it's gonna be an Uber, whether it's gonna be a special shuttle, they're working to make sure that kids' lives are not disruptive, or at least minimized, so that they can get them there. Did that answer your question?
Thank you.
Anything else? Okay, with that, I'll take a motion to adjourn.
I make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Have a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Thank you all, and thanks for your tolerance. It's a little bit longer than I expected, but we had a lot of